So I am a person who spends a lot of their time in their head. I find it very difficult to do feeling and imagery. Yet I love the idea of focusing on a pure light or trying to focus on or create an image in my meditation. And my question was, is it down to the quality of my meditation, or would that be something that would happen if I spent more time in meditation? How would you guide me?
All right. Well, let's pick up the question of time in meditation. I think it's very useful to study along with this Raja Yoga, which is essentially a book on meditation. Um, and alongside that, study the theistic variety of it in Christian terminology, the book by Joel Goldsmith called The Art of Meditation. And I think that is a very useful thing to do because his version of an experience in meditation is a flash. As soon as we get a flash of pure being, and yesterday or last night, I was talking about the idea that thought can be viewed. And what I mean by that is what we think we can observe. The problem is we don't often do it, but we are, or do it directly or do it consciously, but we are always doing it anyway. We know what we think. We just don't dwell on it as a process. We don't trace the origin of a thought as a seed and see how it unfolds. And as it unfolds, we can trace where is it going, and we can also see a critique in it. Do I like this thought? Oh, I should change this thought, and so on. So this point of observation is useful because we can also observe the termination of this strand of thought before another one arises. And it is that moment where there is no thought that is our own pure being. So the whole purpose of meditation is to expand those moments to such an extent that we can easily glide into that and remain there, be, in the language that the yogis use, established in that, the language Krishna uses, to be established in that. And that establishment means that in our working, waking life, we carry that stability with us. And that removes all fear, all doubts, all difficulties that are associated with this individual self, which has this beaming, kind of radiating relationship with the external world that prevents us from the stillness of understanding our own divine origin. So meditation is the process where we get close to that, and then that nearness becomes oneness, and we remove any distinction between subject and object. Now, the easiest way of doing this is by the path of devotion, mobilizing love, and the danger about relating everything to the head, the danger about the headiness of it is it prevents people from a real experience. It puts them in an abstract mode, so that what we're dealing with is highly abstract. Now, you can visualize anything you like in meditation. In meditation, there are about 6 different categories of practices, one of which really is a practice leading up to deeper forms of meditation. But we can go through all of them. So that kind really is the kind that I've just described, of observing what is going on in what we might call a field of activity where thoughts arise, have their seed, develop, evolve, and we can trace it, and we can also trace the running commentary that goes along with it. And along with that comes an image. And with that image, inevitably comes this idea of I, but it's not the I that is fundamental to us. It is the superficial I, which is really body-mind. We can call this ego. So we have to be very careful that we have a real experience, not just an abstract image experience. And to do that, certain conditions are required. Now, the beauty about the Raja Yoga technique, which is the philosophy of yoga, the textbook is Patanjali's Sutras, Yoga Sutras, that means threads, simple aphorisms, and we need commentators to expand on them. Fortunately, we have this expansive commentator called Swami Vivekananda, who's giving us a preamble in the one half of the book Raja Yoga. In the second half, he's giving the commentary based on ancient commentators for every single aphorism. And if we look how Patanjali expresses what should we be meditating on, he gives us such a wide variety, such a wide scope. So we can meditate, for example, on the sound, the primordial sound of Om. We can meditate on a light. We can meditate on the heart of a compassionate person, a saint or an incarnation, the Sacred Heart. Christianity has the Sacred Heart of Jesus, for example. We can meditate on anything which comes to us in a dream. In other words, a fantasy. We can create a fantasy. We can create a relationship. But the thing about Raja Yoga as a system is it is not necessarily theistic. It doesn't have to have a god. It can have some other thing. And one form of meditation would be the absolute form, that is, the form of the absolute whereby there is no particular object, and yet we have to represent the abstract, the absolute, in some way or another. And to do that, we can use maybe the extended horizon of a sea or the sky, or we can meditate on mountains or something like that, and understand we're not really meditating on them, we're just getting the idea of infinity, the idea of absolute infinity. This is one form of meditation. But invariably, the easiest way would be to form a personal relationship, particularly for those people who are orientated toward the head, because they will now start mobilizing their feelings and giving them an authentic experience. And that's the idea of creating a personal God, a God with form, another type of meditation. So, a most beloved thing, and you're using all the creativity of your imagination, and you're mobilizing your feelings in a real experience rather than an abstract one. Now we study the Enneagram, we'll see the pitfalls of all of the numbers in terms of meditation, and this has been supplied to you, of course, on these great sheets that you have, quiet-centered meditation, focused meditation, and so on. So for people living in the head, focused meditation is the way, but that involves stimulating the imagination, using forms, visual accessing. It can also be sound accessing too, whereby we come close to a chosen ideal. And why we would say that is because Patanjali, when he did his Yoga Sutras, he wasn't necessarily thinking of all the distractions of modern life. And now we have to resort to Ramakrishna, because in Ramakrishna, he emphasizes, he doesn't say that one thing is correct, another thing is not correct. In fact, he has the skill of gliding across the border between dualism and non-dualism. Almost in a few sentences, he can do it. But for the most people, for this day and age, it would be mobilizing the heart because it's the easiest way. What could be easier than lovingly repeating God's name? There's nothing more. Any fool can do it. And we're all fools, I suppose. So anybody can do it. It's a very easy way. And if you take all the disciples of Ramakrishna, the monastic apostles, if we can put it like that, they all say the same thing, japa. If we take what is the Holy Mother Sharada Devi's teaching, it's japa, japa, japa. Repeating the divine name continuously. But the caveat is, it has to be accompanied by feeling. And the feeling comes from a sense of thankfulness. So our relationship has to form. The Bhagavad Gita in the 7th chapter tells us something about a devotee. And here we're not talking about meditation yet. And yet, chapter 7 that I'm about to quote follows on from chapter 6, which is all to do with meditation. It's the only chapter of the 18 chapters which is specifically dedicated to the subject of formal meditation. And why do I say formal meditation? Because informal meditation is all the rest other than sitting. That has to be firmly structured in the first place. So there are 4 kinds of devotees that are identified. Those people who are desperately in distress. Now, there are those people who are in distress, but they don't resort to anything else. They say, they deal with it on the material level, the individual level. I'll struggle by myself. I won't seek any outside help. But when life pinches us to the extent of desperation, we become like the bird on the tree in the Mundaka Upanishad. The Mundaka Upanishad. We become like the bird on the tree, tasting the bitter and sweet fruits of life, and finding a fruit that is more bitter than anything else. We look up to the highest ideal of perfection. And in the example, there's a pristine bird sitting there at the top of the tree, radiating, and we're attracted toward that. So we should be attracted to the divine only when we understand the glory of that sitting behind everything. And so it's not to abandon nature, it's to absorb nature and take nature as our clue. And nature, in this sense, we mean the divine. We don't say nature is non-divine. We don't say nature is just atoms and matter and so on and so forth. We agree with modern physics and say that nature boils down to energy. So to our human mind, this energetic power, which is divine power, appears as nature. As nature. That's our starting point in all meditation. And Raja Yoga takes for granted that we have crossed that border already. In other words, we are structuring our life in such a way that already we're engaging, don't forget, 8 steps are there. And the first step is yama. That is, requires self-control. It requires generosity of spirit and compassion. You can summarize the whole thing like that. Put in 5 things, 5 ways. That is non-injury. The opposite side, that is love. Where do you get love from? You have to have a love of nature. But if we're distracted, of course, by all the difficulties in life, then the difficulty arises. That kind of person, if they believe in a divine presence somewhere, a kind of rescuer, then the one kind of person who is virtuous because they believe in a God or a divine, they worship on the basis of what? Please get me out of the trouble. Please lift me out of this despair. And their kind of devotion and prayer, when we talk of meditation, we're talking of prayer, prayerfulness, meditation and japa, the 3 of these things combined. Now, when you ask how much time should be dedicated to this, certainly scheduled time has to be there. There's no doubt. But how long is not a relevant question, Because if I go back then to what Joel Goldsmith is saying, we have no sense of time. It's a flash. As soon as that flash is there, and it can happen any time in the day, as soon as that flash is there and we get used to that, then getting used to it naturally prolongs the time. In other words, it's beyond our schedule. We now say, I wish to have this experience repeatedly. And not only that, I wish to be established in it, feel established in it. So this establishment comes by frequently accessing this divine within in these given moments. And we may not feel it initially in meditation. That's why there are steps toward meditation. In sitting, the equivalent of this yama would be that we now expand our heart. The Buddhists have a word for it. So they have a kind of a phrase for it. But anyway, what it means is expanding the heart in all directions. And so in Swami Vivekananda's first steps, he gives this recommendation: sit down first, and then bless all beings. May all beings be happy. May all beings be peaceful. May all beings blissful. That in itself can be a meditation. You can imagine yourself, your physical self, sitting in front of you, arms hanging either side. North part is called the front of the body, south part, the back. The arm is hanging on the east side, another arm hanging on the west side. And you start in your imagination with infinite supply of rose petals and bless. Strong, true, wise, full, free, truth, beauty, goodness, love, harmony. Please all be happy, be peaceful, be blissful, and extend that to a group of associates. But you see, by doing that, you have now detached from an identity, I am body. And you continue doing that throughout the whole thing. You can bless the entire universe. You can take your time on doing that. That itself can be a meditation, because it's having two effects. Firstly, it's preparing your mind for a close encounter. Number one. Number two, it's literally blessing the world. Many people are complaining. The world is in such a state. If you're a real pessimist, you say, we're on the verge of World War III and so on, so all of these kinds of things. But actually, history shows us we've always been in a turmoil. It's only that we have news about it now. So bless everything. That has its effect. And that is equivalent to the process of yama. And then what is the equivalent of niyama in the formal meditation process? It will be japa. It comes under the category of study. Lovingly repeating God's name. And anyway, in advance in your life, you'll be offering all the fruits of your activities to your divine, to your beloved. Since they come from him or her, it anyway. And then it's posture and so on. You can follow it all the way there. And am I leading a stress-free life, and so on and so forth. And then the formal side of it comes. That is the pratyahara. You can do it by tracing, seeing what is the mind doing, and withdrawing that and closing the senses off. The other day I was telling you about Swami Purnananda. It was his birthday. And so I was mentioning how he uses certain phrases. He says, in my own meditation, I'm paraphrasing, I close all the doors of the senses. He says, he gives this advice. You can tell the external world, no entry here. During the time of meditation, no entry. The capacity to detach like that is necessary in the process of meditation. And we do this progressively, because the whole idea of practice is that we may not have this full encounter yet, but we are moving toward it. And the more we do it, the more we move toward it, as it were. So we shouldn't be too concerned with rules and regulations about it, because the scope is enormous, And Patanjali also goes on to say, or any other subject you like. You can take anything from the storehouse of your memory and use it. And what we're trying to do really is we're trying to reform this unconscious level where we find subtle impressions, find samskaras. And how do we resolve these find samskaras? They're conquered by resolving them into their causal state. According to the Patanjali Yoga Sutras, the second section, and we're talking about the sutra, the 10th sutra in the second section on yoga, concentration. So, by way of explaining what this means, samskaras, says Swami Vivekananda, are the subtle impressions that manifest themselves into gross forms later on. And how these find samskaras to be controlled is a question, by resolving the effect into its cause. When the mind stuff, that is the chitta, which is an effect, is resolved into its cause is asmita, also known as egoism. Its cause is egoism. What is egoism? Egoism is the connection, the identification of the immortal self, the seer that is witnessing everything, including all thought movements, with the objects, internal and external. This is called egoism. This is what we call Enneagram number in the Enneagram system. He says, then only the fine impressions die along with it. Meditation cannot destroy these. So by meditation, their gross modifications are to be rejected. Meditation is one of the great means of controlling the rising of these waves that are coming up in the mind. And by meditation, you can make the mind subdue these waves. And if you go on practicing this, says Vivekananda, for days, for months, for years, until it has become a habit, until it becomes in spite of yourself, then other negative things, such as anger, hatred, doubt, fear, and so on, will all be controlled and checked. So he puts that as the technique. And we have to vary this because we have to make it interesting. Now, in our memory storehouse, there are many, many delightful images that we can have. We can sit and have a reverie. When were we last feeling happy and content? What was the environment we were sitting in? This is the value of such things as pilgrimages. You go to a holy place, and then you bring that back as a memory. And as you go through life and go to more holy places or holy people or situations or churches or temples, somewhere where you sat, for example, in Japan, you may have gotten some influence, some feeling of settlement there. Very good. It's not gone. It's there in your memory. You can bring it out and remember it nicely and allow that to bring you closer to its origin of the manifestation, because that is the source. The divine is the source of all of these impressions. So the lower aspect of this nature is what the five senses are grasping. And this we have to understand when we look out, when we deal with the so-called world around us, which is just a section of our experience. The waking state is a section of our experience. All the energies that are manifesting such experiences, they're flowing out, as it were, in wave forms. And the most subtle of these will be mind, chitta, the waves, the mind stuff, the energy that has kind of accumulated, or kind of vortex, if you will, around a central point. That central point we put a stamp on, I, But beware, because that I is only valid for passport purposes. So these forms are, and this is time and time again I bring it out, these are called tanmatras. When we understand these, then we understand that these tanmatras are all energy waves. We only catch the gross manifestation of it. And we have sense organs, which are part and parcel of that catch it. We have to repeat this time and time again. And the fact that they bifurcate progressively into all sense objects and into the corresponding organs that register them. And the organs and the objects are pretty much the same thing. I'll be a little scientific if I may. You see, the quantum world is a puzzle for modern science. The most reliable physics that we have is incomprehensible. Our physics at the gross level is all deterministic. We know the cause, we know the effect. It runs on determinism. The causal law is called karma. But at the quantum level, where's this karma? These are all divine forces displayed. But where the karma comes in is that these are, of course, in order, as you know, sounds and touches and pressures and colors and tastes and smells. This is on the one side. But the technical terms of these, respectively, we won't bother about it, but they correspond to physical forces, energetic forces. And they combine and recombine to make this gross universe of ours. And they automatically combine, they do it in different proportions. And they draw, here's the important thing, they draw to each thinker the equivalent of the thinker's thoughts. So don't complain, the world is difficult for me. Your thoughts that you may or may not be aware of directly are creating the environment and attracting, arranging the tanmatras corresponding to it. So the intentions, the shape and conditions of your body, the objects, your life, your circumstances, your surroundings, they will all alter for the better only when the pattern of your thoughts is suitably changed. So I keep telling, as a standard answer, please change your thinking. And then you can listen to that, and then the next one, how do I do that? Well, you start off by understanding you have the capacity to watch your thoughts emerging as seeds and developing. And so the pattern of thoughts, when they're suitably altered, will change the very habit level. In other words, this is the way of dealing with these samskaras. It's the key actually to all your spiritual practices and to all your so-called progress. And then the sense objects must be considered in order and so on and so forth. But we can have a penetrating vision. We have to learn to penetrate the external things and progressively, one by one, and see that they are manifestations of the tanmatras. Those manifestations are coming from a cosmic intellect, a God, personal God. They are coming ultimately from a cosmic presence. And that is all in the relative world. But beyond that is an unmanifest. And that unmanifest really is the very life element by which this world is upheld and by which this world is experienced. Religion calls it God. It is that we have to form a personal relationship by looking at all the glories that I've just mentioned. And that is why the yoga system is based essentially on the Sankhya system that gives us this system of tattvas, this system of categorization. 24 categories in the Sankhya system. We can add a few more, make it 26, based on the idea that the individual soul if you want to put it like that, can tap into the grace of the Absolute, the Supreme, the Paramatman, Supreme Self. We have to learn, therefore, to make our attention penetrate all these layers of nature. That's our spiritual practice. And it's only then that we can make the attention remain lovingly fixed on the Lord Himself, as distinct from His manifestations. We're always dealing with the manifestations. The Lord Himself, that's what we want to focus on. So now, 4 types of people, Krishna says, worship me. Directly on the outcome of the meditation, because the chapter is actually to do with knowledge and realization, the yoga of knowledge and the yoga of realization. Naturally, in other words, this is the product of meditation. So when somebody is in distress, what will they do? They will worship, that's fine, but it's on the assumption, not on what I've just told you, but it's on the assumption, I need to be rescued. Please get me out of this difficulty. Please save me. I'm drowning, save me. Well, that kind of faith, if you have faith, yes, the Lord will do that. That's fine. So that's one type of person who is in distress. There are chatur, vita, 4 types. Then the next type of person will be, you can call this first type of person the I am in difficulty person, the situational person. The next person will be, please show me how. Show me how to get out of this. Show me how to manage this. And so that will be, you can say, a seeker of knowledge. And then the third type will be, well, I want wealth. Now, so far, don't forget, in the Hindu system, there are 4 aims in life. And I use this word Hindu very reservedly because, as you know, I prefer the term Vedika or Vedanta. But it's a wonderful way of looking at the structure, because the ancient people had this structure so well organized that there are 4 aims in life. So the person in distress is looking for satisfaction to do with dharma. Please give me some harmony. The next person will be looking for knowledge. They'll be looking for something that they'll be looking for. The third person will be looking for artha, wealth. Wealth. Please give me, and wealth includes a number of things. Please give me, make sure my life is fine, make sure I don't have any worries about finances and so on and so forth. But then there'll be karma. I have a desire for something extra. That'll be the second type. The fourth aim of life would be moksha, freedom. And you may say, but that also means I feel I don't have it and I want it and so on. But in the devotional context, what it means is the wise people, these are described. What are these? Tesham jnani nitya yukta. Of these, the wise people, the wise devotees, the wise lovers, ever steadfast and devoted to the one, that is the Lord of the universe, your Ishta Devata, your personal ideal, a dualistic system. For supremely dear am I to these wise, and that person is dear to me. This is the best of the devotees. Now, we can easily understand that, because if you have a human relationship and you have that relationship so that you can save something, you can get out of trouble, or you can fulfill a desire, or you can increase your personal opportunities in life, But the lasting relationship will be that I love you only because I love you. That's it. Nothing else. You know, there are people who marry, for example, for many different reasons. Some people marry to get a citizenship in a country or a nationality even. And then as soon as that happens, they get divorced. So these are all utilitarian reasons, but you cannot say it's to do with a true relationship. So establishing a true relationship gets you over the abstraction of keeping things only confined to the head. Now, how do we develop such an idea? Is because having gone through all the manifested versions that we have been through, we can see that everything is designed in our favor. Everything goes well. As soon as we are attentive to the source and supporter and support of all, we have gone to the highest fundamental source of all the other things. So that if we are wise and we are devoted for devotion's sake only, love for love's sake only, then we'll get the required livelihood that we need. We'll have the correct desires fulfilled. We'll get a harmony in our mental frame. All of these things will come to us. Seek ye first the kingdom of heaven. Other things will be added unto thee, says Jesus in his wisdom. So these people are noble. Udara sarva eveti jnani. All of these are noble, but the wise person I regard, says Krishna, as my very self. For steadfast in mind, he says, is established in me alone as the supreme goal. But what's the purpose of meditation? Is to make this exclusiveness, to take our attention away from all the fragmented things, the scattered mind things, and gather it all together and beam it toward that one source. And all religions to do with devotional life would say the same thing. Deuteronomy, repeated by Jesus. What is the highest commandment? He's unequivocal about it. Love the Lord your God with all your heart, not some, all your heart, all your mind, all your strength, your whole being. Now, maybe we give a certain portion. Maybe we're not all there, but that's okay. The ideal should be held, and we match up to it. Now, we don't have to follow this theistic view. The Raja Yoga caters for everything. It caters for theists and atheists alike. It's not a problem. But the easiest thing to concentrate on in this day and age would surely be mobilizing the emotions. That makes it real. We escape the temptation of getting hooked up in the head. So of all the values, the greatest is love. And I think I'm quoting, in some way, the Apostle Paul. Then, interestingly enough, Krishna goes on, at the end of many births, the person of wisdom takes refuge in me. So where should we take refuge? You know the answer. And realizing that Vasudeva means that being that pervades everything, supports everything, is with you now, in this moment in time, paving the way, making the crooked paths straight. That being is all that is. Now, I mention, of course, the person who really gets it is a rare soul, but let's not be put off by that. We are all rare souls. We all have the capacity to do this. As long as we have the capacity to direct our thought and direct our feelings through all the various techniques that a guru has mentioned, that scripture has mentioned, all the facilities, starting with the faculty of having a body and mind. These are instruments specifically designed not to give you trouble, but they're specifically designed to urge you toward this final goal of freedom, this goal of moksha. And many people will decide to try to fulfill their desires by petitional prayer, and this is really described in personalizing these tanmatras, calling them devas or deities. But these are forms, different forms of only one being. Only one cosmic mind is there. And behind that cosmic mind, only one entity is there. And so Krishna says, yo yo yo, yo yo yam yam, tanu bhaktaha, whatever form any devotee wishes to worship with faith, with conviction, with full trust, I make that faith of his unwavering. It's a wonderful, wonderful thing. It means that we can contribute to the world if we understand this, to say, see, all paths are true, all concepts of this divine are true, and divinely inspired as well. So endowed with that faith, engages in the worship of that form, and from it obtains his desires, which are actually granted only by me alone. You think that by praying to Saint Anthony, your car keys are found? No, you're praying to Saint Anthony, you're actually accessing the cosmic mind with faith. Yes, my keys will be found. So those worshippers of these, you can say these deities, this egoistic kind of prayer, they will go on to the devas. But my devotees come to me, says Krishna. So these are some thoughts which I may have gone astray on in terms of your question. So let me try to summarize a little bit and see if your question has truly been answered. In studying Raja Yoga, we don't take away bhakti yoga. We incorporate it. And the kinds of things that we should meditate on are included by Patanjali, as well as other things. And I mentioned that we had about 6 forms of meditation. I mentioned one, which is seeing what's going on in the thought process until the mind settles down. Ramakrishna describes it as a spoiled child. The mind is like a spoiled child. It comes up with excuses and objectives and so on and so forth, and wants to go and play everywhere. But when you watch it, then it understands, I'm being watched, I'm being supervised, and settles down. That's a precondition for steering our attention in a meditative way. Concentration. Concentration means catching the mind in its scattering mode and saying, whoa, stop. Let's do one thing at a time. Take one thing only. Let's bring it in. Let's make you steady. Come on. Let's not, if you have a small child and they're at a fun fair, let me go on the ride here. Let me have the candy there. Let me have an ice cream here. I want this, I want that. 1,000 different things. These are the desires of an immature mind. So we stop that. We say, no, you cannot have that. There's something much more useful. Come, let us taste the real joy and bliss and allow the mind to settle. Then to see the temporal nature of things. All of us will have to understand at some point or other that this assembly of material, this aggregate of stuff, will disintegrate at some stage or other, and we'll either go to the cremation ground or we'll go to the burial ground, one or the other. But everything will disintegrate. It's a fact. Everything that is perishable will perish. This is a fact. And so the one thing that doesn't perish should be obvious to us, that we can meditate on. And then we can encourage noble ideas, interesting ideas, imaginary ideas. We can engage in fantasy and delight the mind in this way and put the Lord at the center of this. A delightful exercise like that leads the mind inward to that aspect which is deep inside us of pure bliss. And then we can take another aspect, the light you mentioned. We can visualize a certain light within us. And that will then be taking that aspect that could be personalized as a form, as an entity, a personal living entity within us, a supreme teacher within us. And so we can take that in a formless way, but some image will be there. We can take it as light. And that would be a beautiful meditation too. And then another option, of course, as I say, will be to concentrate on the absolute by representing it with a form of infinity, such as a distant horizon or the eternal sky, blue sky, or something of that nature. These are all various options that we have. And so this is what Raja Yoga is saying. It's giving us many options, but it's also giving us steps, because we have to encourage the mind step by step into this. And that is why the essence of the Patanjali Yoga Sutras will be this eightfold path, which is there. That we have to have self-control. We have to have deliberate conscious practices or observances. We have to have physical steadiness. We have to have neurological steadiness. We have the capacity to withdraw all our attention from the external world. We have to have the capacity then to beam it in a concentrated way on a chosen subject. And then we have to sustain that so that only one thought is available in the mind. This is called meditation in a formal sense. And then when no thought is present in the mind, this is called samadhi. It's a very exciting adventure, very exciting process. Meditation is taking a theme, canalizing it, steering the theme inward until you find only oneness there. And you can say that the Ishtadevata that you think of located in the heart, which is where most scriptures will recommend you meditate on. Now, you can meditate on the forehead, and that's the subject matter that can be covered, because that would be suitable if you're meditating on the absolute. But for most purposes, the heart is the suitable place. And yes, we work on dimensions that there could be, you can imagine, a lotus above the head. That's an optional thing. Yes, by all means, you can do that. But if you feel you cannot do it, if you feel it's a struggle or an effort, then you don't do it. There are many options available that are presented. Use your guru as guidance on this. I hope I answered your question.
Indeed. Thank you very much, Swamiji. More than.
Okay, very good. Well, we have a few moments left, about 7 minutes. So we're available for further questions if you need them. And I might use it because, you see, on these question and answer sessions, I just have an array of books in front of me that I feel might be useful in the event of certain questions being asked. And the curious thing is, it's always the right text for the questions. And one text I had picked up was Enfolded in Love, Daily Readings, extracted from the the literature of Julian of Norwich. So, Revelations of Divine Love. And this is a very handy book because you can pick it up on a daily basis and see what is there. And so I happened to open the page which is called We Shall Not Be Overcome. Now, of course, there's a certain element of Christian concepts within it, so we have to interpret that a little bit. So she writes this: though we are in such pain, trouble, and distress, that it seems to us that we are unable to think of anything except how we are and what we feel, yet as soon as we may, we are to pass lightly over it and count it as nothing. In one small sentence, what she has done is she's captivated those devotees who are in deep distress and said, actually, when you look at it in its true perspective, it's nothing. On what basis? She goes on. And why? Because God wills that we should understand that if we know Him and love Him, we can put that in any tense we like, and reverently respect Him or trust Him, we shall have rest and be at peace. And we shall rejoice in all that He does. It's not a question of withdrawing and cutting off the world. We can rejoice in all the activities we can see around us. You see, when you sit down and examine in that phase of the Eightfold Path called asana, we can use our attention to be aware of different parts of the physical body and relax that. We can take stock of different limbs and different parts and relax that. But as we do that, it should surely occur to us, and if we study physiology, we'll really get it, that it's a miracle. The human body is so complex, so carefully constructed, that when we try to find the root of it, how things work, just from a biological, mechanical point of view, we will surely be struck with wonder that every cell of the body is a small machine, interlocked with all the other small machines, trillions of them, all managed by the group of cells which we have stuffed in our heads. So, we shall rejoice in all that He does. It's Him, we put it in a masculine term in this case, it's Him that is enabling breathing, that is breathing for us, we might even say, that is pumping the heart that we take for granted, that is digesting the food that we take for granted, that is renewing the cells that we take for granted, that we have the capacity to direct. If I wish to raise my hand, I'll raise it. All the complex neurological systems which are there, the whole machinery, like a factory. If we go into a modern factory, the manufacturing factory, then raw materials are delivered at a door. Those raw materials, we can call it food, is put into maybe a slurry form. It is digested, put into a big pot where chemicals are added. And with those additives, something is forming. And then it gets streamlined and packaged and delivered to market, namely the cells of the body. And waste products are taken away as carbon dioxide and all kinds of other things by mass. Now, that's a very simple version of a factory, but it's extremely complex, much more complex than a mechanical factory. Then she goes on to say, I understand truly that our soul may never find rest in things below, but when it looks through all created things, it finds itself, its Atman in capital letters. It must never self-God. It must never remain gazing on its lower self, but feast on the sight of God, its maker, who lives within. He didn't say, you shall not be tempest-tossed, you shall not be work-weary, you shall not be discomforted, but he said, you shall not be overcome. God wants us to heed these words so that we shall always be strong in trust, both in sorrow and in joy. And this she is writing in an atmosphere of two devastating plagues where something like 2/3 of the population of Europe disappears through the Black Death, and many difficulties and problems all around, corpses being taken off. And see this different shift in view that she has. Whenever you think that you're at rock bottom, or think that life is hard and tough, all you have to do is go to how these great, great saints managed to shift their point of view and see the glory of the divine self everywhere. And unless we have that point of view, we will not really be able to meditate satisfactorily. Well, I leave those thoughts with you. Om Shanti, Shanti, Shanti. Peace, peace, peace. Thanks.
Thank you, Swamiji.
Thank you, Swamiji.
Thank you, Swamiji.
Thank you, Swamiji.
Thank you, Swamiji.